Well, we're going to talk about the oxalate sensitivity thing, and it's not going to go well. You know, there's like this consensus out there that some people are more sensitive to oxalates and that they need to run in horror from spinach and almonds. You know, I don't know. And you know, there's some guy out there that has some kind of spinach and almond diet that's like correcting all these health issues out there. So we know that some people do great with these types of foods, but it appears that some people are more sensitive and they do better when they avoid these foods. But when I looked at the research on this topic, it started to confuse me. I was confused by it. I was confused by the research, and I thought that I would share it with you because I want to see if you are also confused by this research. Because I think that you find when you see what I'm going to show you here, that the truth might be that, oh man, we might be looking at this the wrong way. You don't want to miss this.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So I'm going to put a link in the description below for studies that shows that there really is a strong connection between this oxalate sensitivity issue and kidney problems. And when we see a strong connection like that, I think we kind of tend to automatically go, oh man, look at all these oxalates. What the kind of problems they're causing for these kidneys. They're making these kidney stones. They're tearing these kidneys up. It's connected right here with all these kidney disease issues. But what if we're not looking at that the right way? What if it's that the kidneys don't have the ability to do their job correctly, so these oxalates are accumulating instead of being filtered out through the kidneys, and as they accumulate and the kidneys try to get rid of some, now there's a bigger load to try to get rid of, and they're creating all these crystals and stones and all this other trouble that can go along with these high oxalate issues. So when we want to look at how the kidneys are working, we need to understand a few things. Let's look at the sources of these oxalates, because people are running in horror from all these high oxalate foods. But I'll put a link in the description for a study that kind of shows us that like 50% of these oxalates are being produced by our body. They're not even coming from the food that we're eating. So how are you going to run from your own body? That's a difficult task. So the goal shouldn't be zero oxalates. I think we're pretty kind of dead when that's the case. I'm going to assume that that's not the goal with what we're doing here. So we want to look at what's going on and why can't some people handle that load and others do just fine. So we need to understand kidney function a little bit to understand this, and we need to understand the body's detox pathways. So what happens is when we eat food, our stomach makes hydrochloric acid, or HCl. And this HCl is meant to help us acidify that food so that we can start breaking down that food into the elemental nutrients that the body needs. So then once that food is acidified, it leaves the stomach and goes down in the duodenum, which is like the first 10 inches of the small intestine. And that's when the gallbladder will squirt this alkaline bile down into the duodenum, and that alkaline bile helps to neutralize the acids that left the stomach. And when these opposite pHs collide like this stomach acid and this alkaline bile, when they collide, it creates this sizzle, almost like a chemical reaction that really helps us bust that food apart and get all the nutrients and minerals out of that food. So this is all important stuff just to help us digest our food correctly so that we can get nutrients out of our food. That's why we eat food. We don't eat food just to run in horror from oxalates. We're looking for nutrients and minerals and things that the body needs. So the important thing to understand about this bile is that the bile is a soapy substance that's made by the liver. And the liver will then store it in this gallbladder. But the liver filters a lot of the toxins out of the body, and it will put it into that bile. So now the bile comes down here into this intestinal tract, and then it continues through the small intestine and then all the way through the big bowels too, and then it's carrying those toxins with it. Now a lot of those bile salts will get reassimilated and reused, but mainly the bile substance itself is carrying toxins through the intestinal tract, so when we poop like a champion, the toxins go out the back door. That's the main detox pathway that the body has for all the junk that the liver is filtering out. The problem is, for a wide variety of reasons, a lot of people are not making enough stomach acid to acidify that food. And for a wide variety of reasons, a lot of people have bile that has become too thick and sticky to flow correctly. So if it's not flowing down here, then the toxins that were filtered out aren't flowing down there either. And now the toxins are going to get reassimilated, the liver's got to filter them out all over again, and the liver gets overwhelmed and it can't really do all of its jobs correctly. So remember, the solid waste should go out the bowels. That's where that solid waste should go. The liquid waste should go out the kidneys. So when this detox pathway is not working the way that it's supposed to work, now the body's like, well, what else can I do with this? Hey, kidneys, can you help me out? Can you pee out some of this more solid stuff? And now the kidneys are being asked to do jobs that's not really their job. And the perfect example of this is you always see about how people have, oh, my urine got really brown and then I had a gallbladder attack. And you kind of hear that go hand in hand a lot. And that's because this bile duct is getting blocked, and now the bile can't flow through there, and so now a lot of this junk is being pushed out through the kidneys, and you'll see it thicker or more brown or a different color with that urine. So that can be an extreme version of understanding, oh wow, the kidneys are really being asked to do something that they're not supposed to do. We see brown urine, we know there's a problem. But even in a less severe version of that, maybe the duct is not totally blocked, but maybe bile is just not flowing like it should, and a lot of those toxins are not going through the intestinal tract like they should, then you can see that the kidney might be asked to do some situations that it's not really meant to do. And if it's getting overwhelmed being asked to do all these other jobs, then these kidneys can't do their job as well, and one of those jobs is to filter out these oxalates. The next thing we need to look at when we're thinking about kidneys is there enough water flowing through the kidneys for them to do their job? Water has to go through there for them to be able to filter out junk. So the first thing is a person bringing in enough water? I talk to clients all the time. I'm like, how much water are you drinking? I had some water this morning when I brushed my teeth. I had a little bit, and I'll brush my teeth tonight. I'll probably have some water then. And they're not really drinking enough water. They're drinking soda and all this other junk, and they think, oh, that has some water in it, so that counts. A person really needs to drink water. The other problem is there's issues with imbalances in the body that can dictate where that water is being sent. So it was a Dr. Emmanuel Revisi who helped us understand that the body has a natural circadian rhythm at the cellular level. So during the day, the body should be in a more catabolic state where it's really good at creating energy and kind of keeping us going all day. And it's really good at breaking down tissue so that it can be rebuilt and renewed. And then at night, the body should switch into this anabolic state where the body's very good at resting and sleeping and repairing and rebuilding. So both of these states are appropriate. They're great. We want both of them to happen. The problem is, for a wide variety of reasons, some people can get stuck in one of these states most of the time or way too far into one of those states. And if a person is pushed too far into this catabolic state, the body tends to send more of the water to the bowels and less to the kidneys. So when somebody's dealing with what we call a catabolic imbalance, where they're just kind of stuck in this breakdown state all the time, we see a lot of chronic diarrhea issues because the body's sending all the water to the bowels and not enough is going to the kidneys. Now that's not the only cause of diarrhea, and a person in this situation is not always going to have diarrhea. But over here we see a lot of constipation because all the water is going through the kidneys and not enough is going to the bowels, and the bowels get hard and dry, and then the stool can't move very well. Again, there's other causes of constipation, but this can be one possible marker that we see when somebody is really imbalanced in this area. But if someone was overly catabolic like we're looking at here, then not as much water is going to go to the kidneys, so now the kidneys can't filter out as much stuff like they're supposed to. So oxalates would have a really easy time accumulating, and the person might even be drinking enough water. But if the body's sending it all to the wrong place, out the back door, then the kidneys aren't able to do their job because there's not enough water going through them. Now, if you think this might be a problem for you, in the description below, we'll put a link to our video on Is My Circadian Rhythm Off? And you can kind of walk through that and see, oh, maybe am I leaning too far on one of these sides? And I can take some steps to correct that so that my body will put more water in the right place. So let's go back and look at what we're at, because we also need to look at the fact that the research kind of shows us that minerals are very important when it comes to oxalates. So when we look at this study that I'll put the link for below, we find that the amount of oxalates being absorbed can depend on the diet. And they say here, well, if somebody has a low calcium diet, for instance, that's going to be an increased absorption of oxalates. And they say because the calcium really binds to those oxalates. In the same way, if there's malabsorption, then all of a sudden that oxalate uptake is increased because of the reduction in calcium, just because the person is not absorbing correctly, right? So when we go back and we look at this digestive function, like we were talking about before, that's how we get minerals out of the food. The malabsorption can come from an inability to break that food down correctly, when the food can't be acidified, and then when bile is not coming down and neutralizing those acids and creating that sizzle, we don't get all the minerals and nutrients out of that food. I'm also going to put a link in the description below that showed that when magnesium goes in with the oxalates, then the body can handle them a lot better. But if the magnesium is not going in, then it's problematic. So a lot of these people that are having problems with these oxalates may not just be bringing in enough calcium and magnesium because they're not digesting their food in a way that allows them to get the minerals out of the food that they're consuming. And I'll link this study below as well too. They did one where they took some mice and they said, oh man, we got some, it seems that the whole GI tract is involved in this whole process. So we're gonna try and break some of the GI factors with these mice and then see how it affects the oxalates. And sure enough, it did. And I'll put a link to that below. But it kind of helps us understand that digestive malfunctions and things going wrong here can really create a lot of trouble. And WebMD kind of told us that, hey, if you don't have the right gut flora there, they can really help us process these oxalates. So if someone had an issue where they have SIBO or some type of gut dysbiosis, then that can be a problem as well. So we really want to make sure that digestion is working correctly and that we don't have some type of gut dysbiosis, so that those good bacteria are there to help us process these oxalates. Another thing that's interesting is that you almost see like, hey, if you've had bypass surgery, you get to have oxalate problems. Congratulations, that's just kind of be how it goes. And this bypass surgery, well, it bypasses this whole part of the digestive process. They just go this way instead, and we're just going to skip that other part, whatevs. And when you skip this other part, now this bile is not being called on. Because the thing that's interesting is that this bile is triggered by stomach acid coming down here. So if someone doesn't have enough stomach acid, sometimes that doesn't trigger the bile as much, and not as much bile will come down. And this gallbladder is made to concentrate the bile. That's its job. So when it's concentrated, a small amount will do a better job. So if the bile's not being called on and it's just going to sit there, it continues to concentrate until it concentrates into sludge or even concentrates into stones. And I'm also going to put a link to a study below that talks about how PPIs are now really connected to all these kidney problems. So if a PPI is turning off stomach acid and there isn't enough stomach acid to properly trigger that gallbladder to squirt the bile down, and these toxins are not going through the intestinal tract like they should, is it because the kidneys are being asked to do too much and they're getting too much of a burden because the detox pathway is shut down? I don't know. I'll also put a link of a study below that shows that hypochlorhydria, or a lack of stomach acid, has the ability to create malabsorption and stomach and gut infection. So does that confirm what we're kind of questioning here? Does the lack of stomach acid have the ability to reduce our ability to assimilate those minerals that help us bind and control those oxalates a little bit? And if so, that might be a big deal. And if the no stomach acid is letting in these bad infection things and creating these problems where the good gut flora is not there to help us process those oxalates, well, that could be part of the problem as well. But that's interesting to me. That's interesting to me that they're starting to point these things out like, hey, these things are where the problems are, and we're seeing these connections. And a connection doesn't mean it's a fact, but it's interesting enough that we should be looking at this in a way that makes a little more sense. So just remember, I'm not giving you medical advice here. You should be listening to your doctor. I'm not saying go eat all the spinach in the land if you have oxalate problems. What I'm saying is maybe we need to look at the facts that, hey, do I have oxalate problems, and am I showing signs of poor bile flow? If you don't know, we'll put a link in the description below for our video on 10 signs of poor bile flow. We'll also put a link in the description below for our video on 10 signs of low stomach acid. And if either of those issues are going on, is it creating a problem where maybe the body can't digest the food correctly and get the minerals and nutrients out of the food that we're eating, so that that calcium and magnesium is available to help bind those oxalates and make them not such a problem? Or is my body maybe not detoxing correctly, and maybe I'm calling on my kidneys too much to do too much of that work? Or maybe is my body sending too much of the water to the bowels and the kidneys aren't even getting enough water to do the job that they need to do? So even though none of these things that I've talked about have been proven in a study, nobody's done a study of, hey, let's see what TC says about fixing digestion. Does it help the kidneys work better? That study hasn't happened. Remember, this was just research that they've done that made the situation that we were looking at look a little bit confusing. So did it confuse you too? That's really what we want to know. And if it did, who's to say that you're not allowed to look at how your physiology is operating and say, oh, are some things malfunctioning? And if they are, can I take steps to improve those? And if I can improve the way digestion is functioning, if I can improve the way that my body is detoxing, if I can change where the body is sending the water and help my kidneys out, does that improve this situation for me? That's really what we want to know. So what you can do right now is jump over and watch our video on 20 signs that you're not digesting your food correctly. If a lot of those signs are showing up for you, then that might let you know, oh, taking steps to improve my digestion might help me out a little bit. Let me know how it goes.